What's up, you guys? This is He Said, She Said podcast. My name is Nina Marie, and this is Coach COIDE. What's goody? We're going to be talking about masculine men versus toxic masculinity. So let's get into this. This is a good topic that me and COIDE have gotten into recently, and we want to, chime in on this thing that's going on. This little topic that's going on, and just dive into this little thing.
All right, we're talking about masculinity versus toxic masculinity. And I feel like in this era of our generation, we have kind of lost the real definition of what masculinity is and what toxic masculinity is.
Yes.
I've kind of experienced this myself. So, Nina, what's your take on all of this?
Well, I honestly feel like when it comes to, masculinity and how a man should exude that, I feel like society has defined what it means to be a masculine man. And I think it's very one-dimensional, where you have the football player, the very macho type of man that we see in the movies that's, killing people and slashing people. And it's like, I think that we need to go from a place of like, well, what does God say? And number two, I feel like there's so many ways that God has given us examples, or even just many ways that men can flourish in being themselves. And it's still masculine. I think if you know God and if you understand who God is, he's multidimensional. He's not just one person, or one way of being. And so if you can tap into your own divine personality, then you can still be considered masculine without having to feel put in a box as to what society says you should be as a man. And I think, I want to hear more of your story of how you've been boxed in.
Okay. I think a lot of times as men, we've kind of gotten to this place where we feel like certain things demasculinize us, if that makes sense. So you can't, I'm not the type of person to get my nails done, but I've heard certain men get their nails done and they feel like
get your nails done.
I've never got my nails done. What are you talking about?
You told me you get the little.
I've done that before, but it's not a consistent thing. You know what I'm saying?
But like, you would do it, but
I would do it. But I'm saying I've had conversations with other men who have felt like that would demasculinize them as a man, and it. Again, let me put it like this. I think it's all based about your experience, the experience that you've had with other men in your life, and even when it comes to women. If you're a woman and you've seen this certain type of man for a certain period of time in your life, then you're going to pattern who you date based off of this man. And if that is his experience or her experience, let me say that, if that's her experience, then she's always going to look at this man like, this is what a masculine man is. And this is what I'm going to box him in as. And if he has anything less than that, then he's not a man.
Yeah. So for you, what has some of the characteristics that, you kind of walk into that has been defined as, oh, that's not masculine?
From my personal experience, I think a lot of what I've walked into is because I'm not this macho man. You know what I mean?
You remind me of like a Renaissance style of man. You can dress nice. You're not afraid to, be emotional. You're not afraid to, show your emotions and be vulnerable and stuff like that. And I think that is kind of frowned upon in society as a man.
And I agree. I think it definitely is something that society has frowned upon, saying that as a man, if you show your emotions, you're less of a man by showing your emotions. And our women in this society have kind of adapted to, oh, he crying, he being emotional, he being a quote unquote bitch about the situation. Then he's not a man.
Yeah.
And one thing about me is like I'm a worshiper. I don't,
Come
you know me. I'm a worshiper, and I've had men actually tell me like, Brad, don't take all that. And deep down, they feel like by them showing their emotions or allowing God to, what I would say, minister to them, because I think that's what happens to me when I worship is it's ministry, and allowing God to minister to them is I guess it's a relationship, but to intimacy. A man who hasn't, again, and I think that's another topic that we can open up right there, is a lot of men don't want to be intimate.
They lack intimacy with God, honestly. I mean, and it's so crazy that like women, or even some women can say, "Oh, you're a bitch," or "You're a pussy," because you showing emotion. But it's like, isn't that what you want though? Because once you get into a relationship, we over here asking our men, "Well, why don't you talk to me?" Or like, "Why don't you da 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 da?" And it's like, but you want to clown or rag on this dude for actually doing what you're asking. Right.
But here's the question. What has actually demasculinized our men? Has it been society or has it been our women?
I think both. I mean, growing up in my community, I know that I was taught at an early age that men shouldn't show, emotion like that, like women. You shouldn't be like a woman. And I think as I've gotten older and I've gotten my own relationship with God, and I've, seen how Jesus expressed himself, I'm like, wait, but Jesus did this. You know what I'm saying? So why is this considered just for a woman? I think that we're not allowing men to walk into their divine power by operating in these emotions that Jesus himself,
and if you want to be technical, a lot of the things that Jesus did in society are not masculine things.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
They're not masculine things. Jesus is bared the cross. And to be honest with you, a lot of men I think would say, like, that ain't manly of you to, do this for such and such, these people that you don't know.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I personally feel like, now the women that I've been around personally, they praise, men like you. But, I do know that you've also had your experience with dating certain women that didn't appreciate those qualities, and, how did that transpire and how did that make you feel?
As far as like how it made me feel, I you know me. I'm the type of person that I'm just like, look, bro, like, on to the next one.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't appreciate me for being who, and I'm not gonna say the man that I am, I'm gonna say who God has called me to be versus who the man I'm supposed to be. Yeah. If you can't appreciate me as that, then you ain't for me.
The one.
And it's just
the one, son.
I'm gonna trust God in another situation.
Yeah. Facts. Truth and facts. I mean, I think if anything, if a woman can, make how you are as a man a bad thing, I think that she missing out. Like I always say all the time,
I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say this from my personal experience is I don't want to. I think we can continue to point the blame on, well, you stupid for not choosing him. If you whatever you get in this situation from this point on, it's on you. But what if that woman, what if the masculinity that she has identified with is all she knows? She can't truly appreciate a man who is going to come here and take her out. And I'm just saying take her out because, a lot of men, I don't think a lot of quote unquote thuggish men, show court or what is it? Chivalry or show chivalry to women. And, it's to not talk so much about my situation, I would say this. I think in that situation, there were some things that she experienced within herself that it almost became she was almost in disbelief because this man is consistent. And another thing too is I feel like consistency is a big issue when it comes to men and making them feel like that, oh, because this dude is consistent, he gotta be gay. Oh, because he's consistent, he gotta have kids. You know?
Right.
Oh, because he's consistent, he gotta be cheating. You know, it's always an issue because he's consistent.
I feel like I'm so grateful that God has humbled me in that, thought process, because I used to think the same way, when I was younger and just ignorant, and I just didn't have any insight of like how to walk into your divine power and whatnot. I thought that as a man, you're supposed to do certain things. You're supposed to act a certain way. You're supposed to be a certain way. You're supposed to, but really, the humility, the soft, like the way that I look at manliness or even masculinity is how God handles me. God is very soft with me, very gentle. He's not pushy. He's not, you know what I'm saying? And that doesn't mean that God doesn't also have his ways of being stern and firm and whatnot. And that is not to disregard men who do operate in that way. That's fine. But to, say that someone who is kind of like a Renaissance man, like, I feel like COIDE is, that's also another example of masculinity. And I feel like we do men a disservice by putting them in a box, or even just saying, hey, this is the standard that men should operate in. And if you don't operate this way, you ain't a man. I think that the narrative needs to shift and say that, hey, there are different ways that masculinity is shown. And one of the things that we always talk about is how God always says you are an example. And I love that, because it's like God has placed us, each man on this earth, to be an example, right? An example of his masculinity. I feel like God has planted his own personal DNA in every man. And it just means that, hey, you can operate in this, form of masculinity. You can operate in this form of masculinity. And you don't have to down this man because he's operating in this way that God has called him to be. Right. You can celebrate, his form of masculinity versus like, oh, you ain't a man. No, you are being a man. Right.
I think the biggest thing is, at least for me, and I can't speak on any other brother out here, but when you identify who you are in God and who you are as a man, the rest of this stuff is like irrelevant. You know what I mean? Really like I'm gonna be honest with you, I've had you must be gay, the femininity, and like there's certain I have a friend who I would I'm not gonna say that he is gay, but I've questioned it, a couple times. Yeah. But I identify with him from that place of, just because his masculinity isn't defined as the way mine is, doesn't necessarily make like, he's gay. Right. I think we always gonna have this situation where we judge, and I feel like that's the reason why God says we shouldn't judge people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because then when you continuously judge somebody, you put them in a box.
Yeah, definitely. And you stifle their ability to grow and flourish into who God has called them to be. And this is why I'm so, passionate about get to know who. And I know, like, hey, I know we talking about God, but we over here, we love God. So and we believe in the power of God and knowing him. And so it's like I'm so passionate about get to know God, because then you will really figure out who you are, and you'll flourish in that. And whatever anybody says about you won't even matter, because it's like, I know who I am, and there's power in your individuality as a person to be who God has called you to be.
Agreed. So let me ask you this question. Let's get a little bit more personal with Nina. Have you ever had a situation where you kind of categorized a man or a guy that you may have been dating as him not being masculine?
Yes. Yeah. I'll say, younger Nina, not so, I think Nina today is more so like, okay, I have a preference and I'm okay with my preference. But that doesn't mean that I can't say, you know what, hey, you're still who you are. I just prefer a different type of man or whatever, a different type of example of a man versus how you can be, or what, not necessarily you, but, but yeah, when I was younger, I used to kind of gravitate towards the narrative of, the macho and, quit being a bitch, why are you crying? Or like, I almost put men on this pedestal to be God. Like, and I had this warped, way of thinking how a man should be, as if he should be unfazed. And it's like, as God has like pruned me and helped me to grow, I've seen that men are human as well. You cannot, expect these things from men and think that they're going to be this unrealistic expectation that you have. And that's the thing. I think that's the I guess that's the thing that people are doing, is that they have these unrealistic expectation for men to be this. And it's like, you're expecting something that's just not who they are. And you have to learn how to accept people for who they are. Regardless of if you agree with it or, regardless of if you can accept it or not, So what do you think with everything that we just said that people can take for their life and for not just men, but women as well?
I think it's going to take that individual coming to a place where they have to re-identify or redefine what they have categorized as masculinity for years, if that makes sense. And I guess I'm speaking from a man perspective, speaking to the men. I think the biggest thing that the men need to understand in this conversation is identify who you are as a man first. And once you get to that place, flow into the place of understanding who you are in God. A lot of people always say, find out who you are in God first. But the issue is, what we don't realize is the scripture talks about us being born into sin. We're born into flesh first. So you need to identify yourself as a man and then allow yourself to kind of flow into what God has called you to do and who God has called you to be as a man.
So I kind of feel like a lot of times God has planted certain things already in your heart. And I think that we don't trust ourselves enough to trust what God has planted within us. I think a lot of times we question what's already planted. And I think sometimes, look within yourself. Look within what you naturally gravitate towards. I think sometimes, like for instance, you say, oh, men can't wear, pink, or men can't wear this type of color. But God may be calling you to be, a fashion guru or something that is outside of what your community may consider masculine or whatever, which in my opinion is toxic masculinity, where it kind of pushes you into an example that's not even you. So it's like, what do you naturally gravitate towards? And that a lot of times is masculine. A lot of times is who you are called to be. And you can learn how to trust what's already planted within yourself,
So we're going to wrap this episode up of the He Said, She Said podcast. This is your boy, Coach COIDE, and I'm here with Miss Nina Marie. And you guys continue to go out there and be creative.